Hey y'all, my name is Sarah and welcome to my channel. Hi there. If you are a new viewer, welcome to the channel. If you're a returning viewer, thanks so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. So today I'm going to be working with Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2 water-soluble artist crayons. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the difference between Neocolor 1 and Neocolor 2 pastels, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about how I've been using them and what's inspired me to use them more. So this is a drawing I completed recently in my nature journal. It's of a house finch, and this is on a Stillman & Byrne Epsilon series sketchbook, so it's not at all watercolor paper. But I ended up using core watercolors as a base layer, and then I went over it with my Caran d'Ache Luminance colored pencils, and I really liked the texture. Normally I've not really enjoyed this process, especially for portraits, but in this case, because the bird feathers show texture, I felt like the technique worked well for this drawing. So this is a Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2 artist crayon. The difference between this and the Neocolor 1 is this is water soluble and the Neocolor 1 is water resistant. So Neocolor 1 behaves like normal crayon like you would expect, and Neocolor 2 dissolves in water. So I'm just going to show you here a little demonstration of the Neocolor 2. I'm doing this test on cold press paper and hot press paper just so you can see the difference. As you can see in the swatches next to the one I'm wetting here, the pigment doesn't always completely dissolve. This particular color I'm playing with does tend to fully dissolve, but they don't always. And you know, it depends on how hard you press and the tooth of your paper and all kinds of factors. But this is what the swatch looks like after it's dried mostly. You can see on the cold press paper it dissolves and behaves a little more like you would expect watercolor to behave. This notebook is my Etcher Hot Press sketchbook. I'm just swatching a handful of colors. Some colors are more pigmented, some colors have white mixed in, so you really need to swatch your colors before you use them if you're planning on wetting them, because they really do behave differently. Some are more transparent, some are more opaque, and you really need to have, you know, a swatch sheet so that you can really see the differences. I also noticed that on this watercolor paper, it's a little more sturdy, and I managed to completely dissolve the Prussian blue, which is not always possible depending on what color you're working with. Now in these swatches, I just wanted to show that you can really lay down a heavy layer of pigment and then wet only the area where the pigment is, and it's pretty much like gouache. It is almost as opaque as gouache depending on the color you're using, and it kind of paints like gouache as well. Of course, just like watercolor or gouache, the more water you add, the more transparent it's going to appear. And I just swatched a color that has white presumably mixed in so that you could see the difference between the two. So I know I've just shown you how the Neocolor 2 crayons behave when you wet them, but I did not opt to do that for this painting. I've only just started using this technique and I'm more comfortable with watercolor just as a general rule anyway. So I decided to continue to put watercolor down as my base layer. So what you're going to see in this painting is me putting down a layer of watercolor, and then I'm going to go over it with the Neocolor 2s. The other thing I want to point out about the Neocolors is you can sharpen them. I have a colored pencil sharpener that has a smaller hole and a bigger hole, and they sharpen fine in the bigger hole. I don't necessarily like to sharpen them because I feel like I'm wasting the product, but I will sharpen them when I need to. So you'll see me do that a couple of times in this painting as well. If you're curious about my other materials I've used in this video, my watercolors are Core by Golden, and my sketchbook is the Strathmore 500 series mixed media sketchbook. At first, I wasn't entirely pleased with how watercolor behaved on this sketchbook because it does kind of soak into the paper. You don't have that time to work like you would normally with 100% cotton paper. This sketchbook is 100% cotton, but I think it lacks the surface sizing that we would normally expect in watercolor specific paper. However, what I find interesting about the paper in the sketchbook is that the watercolor paint leaves a texture that is not, quote, normal for watercolor paper in a way that I find really pleasing when I'm looking for texture. So in this case, I really enjoy using the watercolor as the underlayer and then going over the top with the Neocolor 2s. In the future, I will do more experimentation with using the Neocolors as the base layer and then wetting them. But for this one, I really had this particular process in mind, and I'm really happy with the result. And with that, I will leave you to enjoy the rest of the piece. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. I'll see you at the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed watching me create this little bird. It was really fun. I just really love the texture that came from using the Neocolor 2s on top of the watercolor. I would just point out that I do regularly use Workable Fixative in my art. I use it anytime I use colored pencil or the Neocolor artist crayons. I will either use it to set the artwork when I'm done working on it, or I will use it to set a layer so that I can use other mediums on top of it. So because the Neocolor 2s are water soluble, it's quite difficult to use pins on top of it. So I will use a layer of Workable Fixative and then go back and do my gel pen work and any other little touch-ups that I feel are needed, including like brush pens, ink pens, any of that kind of thing. Thanks so much for stopping by and checking out the video. I hope that you enjoyed watching how I like to use the Neocolor 2 artist crayons. And I hope that it might have inspired you to check out wax pastels or artist crayons in your own daily art practice. Make sure to give the video a like and hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell to get notifications. Leave a comment if you have any questions, or tell me how you use artist crayons in your daily practice. I'll see you all next week.